Welcome back to Cards and Comics. Today, I'm going to be admitting something that's kind of tough, as a collector to admit, but I was a grade snob, and I'm a recovering grade snob. And what I mean is, when I collected, a lot of my vintage cards, I really paid attention to the grade, not the card itself. And I was a snob in other ways too, but in general, the card snob in me was around the grade of the card. Now, in my defense, I want to give you some history. When I first started collecting cards, my first graded card I purchased in, I want to say 97, 98. And at the time, you know, when grading was a little new and the vintage guys, the dealers are out there, they did not care at all about any grade besides a PSA 8 for most vintage. And what I mean is that if you collected vintage cards and you had, and I'm talking mostly 50s, 60s, 70s, right? The golden age of vintage, for the most part. Anything pre-war was different, but I'm talking like 50s, 60s, and 70s. If it wasn't an 8, they just weren't interested in it. And what I mean is, if you had an 8, let's say a 65 Willie Mays 8, you could get 75, 80% trade-in value or cash value for most dealers at a show. If you had a 7, you got 50% or below because they couldn't move those cards very easily because people didn't want 7s. They wanted 8s or above, right? So it was tough because as a collector, you wanted to have cards that, you like the grade. So I did like the PSA 8 grade in terms of condition. I thought the cards were nicer than 7s for the most part. And in general, they are. And I don't want to say that there's no difference in grades because there is. However, being a little too focused on the grade, sometimes you'll overlook a lot of details on a card that makes it nice. Centering, print defects, focus. Those things are still really important for a card. And so you can have a PSA 8 and have it be off center, out of focus with print defects, and a clean 7 with a one bad corner. To me, would be visually more appealing than the 8, and I was never really interested. I would just be like, well, it's a 7, and this is an 8, and it's a better card. So that's kind of embarrassing, to talk about that. I was really hung up on grades for a long time. And, in fact, when I put together my Clemente collection, the reason why I didn't complete it till just last year wasn't because I didn't have all the cards or wanted, could get all the cards. It's because I wanted them in an 8.5 versus a 7 or 8. And I ended up getting the 8 65 to complete that set because I just got to the point where I knew from a cost perspective and availability it just was going to take so much longer, and I felt like I would just wanted to move on and collect other things, and I could complete it with the card I ended up buying. But it really dawned on me just recently because of as pricing and cost has gone up, and I keep wanting to collect 50s vintage, but I just never seemed able to pull the triggers because I'm just only looking at certain grades, and I don't realize that other grades of cards are still there that are very nice and appealing. And this card right here I have on screen is the first real example of me, making kind of a transition to really nice eye appeal cards that may not grade like I used to want, but still aren't really nice cards. And so the card is, and you can see it's a Ted Williams card. So it's card number 250. And the thing I love about this card is that, it's so well centered, really nice color. I know my camera kind of sucks and you can't see it in great detail, but this card has great color, great eye appeal. I think I posted it on my Instagram and in a short as well. But I want to just talk about it because it's a PSA 6. And 5 years ago, I never would have bought a PSA 6 of a 50s Hall of Famer, no matter who it was. And even Hall of Fame rookie cards from this time period, I would always look for a 7 or above. And, when I had the Hank Aaron and the Ernie Banks rookie cards, they were 7s. When I had the 52 Topps Willie Mays, it was a 6. And the reason why I don't have it anymore was because it was a 6. I got rid of it because it was a 6. And that was a dumb thing to do. I also had a 52 Jackie Robinson Topps that I got rid of because it was a 6. And I wanted that card in a 7 or 8. And, so I got rid of the cards, sold them to buy other cards that were graded higher, right? And so chasing, the higher grades, for one thing, it does pay off. And again, going back to what it was like in the late 90s, early 2000s, was trading those cards to dealers or trying to upgrade was so hard that it made more sense to just hold out, pay more for the 8, and then later on you could trade those cards and move them a lot easier at that time. And hopefully with the way the cards have gone up in value, that the 6s and 7s are more liquid, easier to move, and dealers aren't so snobbish themselves that they realize that there's a big market for cards that aren't 7s, 8s, and 9s, right? And so the other way I'm snobbish is being a PSA guy, right? And I keep saying over and over, but some people who contact me, want to pin me as a PSA only guy, right? And I get it. I talk a lot about, crossing over from SGC to PSA in some videos. And when I do a lot of my price analysis, I only look at PSA. And that's for two reasons. One is, PSA on vintage is still bringing more money. But the amount of sales in those cards is so much higher than SGC that to try to get good sales data for a lot of cards, like, 50s and 60s Mays cards, that it's just hard with the volume that SGC does, right? It's no knock on their ability to grade. Now, back to me being a snob, I would only buy SGC cards back in the day, 5 years ago, maybe even 4 years ago, to pop them out and regrade to PSA. And that was the only intent I would buy an SGC card. It was to build raw card volume because I pop them all. I'd send them back into PSA. And I've got a video about it. It's a 76 card SGC to PSA crossover video where I go through all the results. And, the results are what they are. In the long run, I made money. The upgrades I got on those cards were offset the downgrades, and I ended up making money. But in general, I found that SGC missed a lot. I'm sure PSA misses a lot too. But in general, I lost grades. So take it for what it's worth. Now, recently, I have picked up SGC cards that I don't plan on ever crossing over. And this is new for me. I don't ever really think about this. In the past, I never would have been like, hey, this SGC card is awesome. I'm just going to keep it. And so the first card I'm going to show you is a card I don't know if I've really shown off too much on the channel. Because I think I got it, before I was posting on YouTube and doing stuff. I have shown it on TikTok, I think, when someone questioned, about collecting vintage and that, you don't have, you only collect like Clemente or something. So I got other cards too. And I showed this card. So it's a 56 Jackie Robinson SGC 88. And I just think it's a great, great looking card. And I don't think I need to change holders. It looks great in this holder. It has great corners. It has great centering. It's got just everything about it is great. And, the dealer I got it from was pretty much exclusively a SGC dealer. And, in the vintage market, there are dealers that are strictly SGC, and they're really pretty aggressive on the idea that SGC is much better than PSA. I will never agree that they're much better or that PSA and SGC have a huge gap either way. That PSA is much better or SGC is much better. I will say that if you were to buy the card, not the holder, that this card, no matter how you look at it, is a great card, no matter whose holder it was in. If this was a PSA 7 holder, it still is a great card. It's an SGC 88 holder, it's still a great card. So I'm never going to pop it. I just don't feel like it's worth the time, the hassle, the potential to damage the card. It's just not worth it. And I think the holder is great and the card's great. So I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to cross this card over to PSA. Even though today it would probably be worth more money and worth my time to do that, I just think it's good where it's at. And I like the card as is. Another card that I'm probably never going to cross over is my 55 Killebrew rookie card. And again, I purchased this at the same time I purchased my 55 Ernie Banks. Same dealer. And, he told me, he's like, this card he was going to cross this card over. And he decided to kind of get out of the card, business back in 2019, before, everything kind of blew up, right? So he kind of picked the bad year, to really get out before everything really got big. But, he was telling me this card, was something that he thought would really cross over well. And I still think, it's a great card. It's centered, and I don't think I'm ever going to cross this over. I don't think it adds value, in my opinion. Now, obviously, if I was just in this whole thing to resell, buy and sell, and that's it, yeah, maybe if the delta between the SGC 8 and the PSA 8 was so great, it's worth it. But I just don't think so. And the last card I'll show, just to, throw another one out there again, is an 8.5, right? And this is a Ron Santa rookie card. I've had this card for a few years now, and I just don't feel like it just looks great. And again, I just don't feel like it's something I need to cross over, right? It's a really nice card as is. And so I have major cards. I mean, I think these are nice cards. These are major cards that are not PSA, and they are, what they are, and they're great cards no matter what. And this card I just picked up in this PSA holder is a great card. And, there is tons of value in this card, but I can afford it. I can take the money that the 7 or 8 would cost me and get other cards and have other things to enjoy besides one Ted Williams card. So that's, just something to think about. And, for me to say like, hey, I will consider five, sixes, even sevens for some years, when I never would have considered that 5 years ago, is a big deal because as a collector, you kind of like having everything the same. You want the same grade, the same holder, everything to be the same, and so we're a little OCD that way. I think we all are. And to allow yourself to do it a little differently, to think about it differently, is a big deal. I think a lot of people don't realize that, as a collector yet, that it's about, pitting things like together and looking at them as a whole set or a whole thing. And when things don't look right or don't feel like they're the same, it's a OCD feeling that hurts a lot of collectors because they're like, I just, this doesn't look right. This doesn't feel right. And to kind of be like, yeah, I'm over that. I can do this. I can buy a six and be okay with that. It's a big deal for me. And I don't know if other collectors feel the same way. Let me know. Am I the only one who kind of feels like it's hard to admit that, like you were buying cards, a lot of times just on the grade. But that's it. And I hope other collectors can kind of, if you feel the same way or if you're having similar struggles, trying to, justify going to the lower grades, I'd say like, if the card's a great card and it looks great, and, I was thinking about this card, wait, and another way was, if I'd have bought this card in 1994, before grading was a thing for me, and this was at a card show, everyone at the card show would have said this card was mint. I guarantee it. Like this card would have been like, that's a mint card. It's a little off center on back, but everything else is really good about it. And at the card show, no one would have been like, yeah, this card, isn't a near mint to mint or mint card. It would have been, and it would have been a card that everyone would agree because it's such a pretty card, great color, great gloss, right? So today I look at this card and say, yeah, it's a great card. I would have thought it was great then. I think it's great now. That six on the holder doesn't really change how I look at it and think about it. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do from now on. So hopefully this helps people who may be struggling with that. The cost of the hobby has gone up. So you got to think about things a little differently. And, I've kind of gone and done my own rethinking, and here's where I'm at. And hopefully other people can let me know how they think about it, how they've changed their own collecting habits, and let me know in the comments. And I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.